Are you living the divine life? Many of us are not, and there just might be a few things keeping us from this. Welcome to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. In our program, you'll learn to use the tools that have been given to you to make changes that you need, and by doing so, come one step closer to living that divine life. Now, here is your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson.
Namaste, beloved Seventh Way family. I greet you with blessings of peace, power, and prosperity. Peace that passes all understanding, power that is your divine birthright, and prosperity in all 6 areas of your life: the physical, mental, emotional, relational, spiritual, and financial. As we tend to do, let us now take this moment to center ourselves in preparation for today's discussion. As you breathe, become mindful that it is not you who is breathing, but the divine source who is breathing you. There is a holy and sacred consciousness that is ever present, and through practicing spiritual principles, you have access to the oneness that we call God. For today's reading, I will be reading a poem entitled Prayer Poem of Love. I find comfort in knowing that I am the creator of my experience. I love the feeling, the empowerment. I find comfort in knowing that I am the creator of my experience. I love feeling the empowerment within that knowledge. I marvel at my ability to create exactly what I need for my greatest expansion. I appreciate the others who are willing to play their part within this unfolding scenario. I know on the other side of pain is comfort. On the other side of struggle is strength. Just after fear comes courage. Around the corner from hate is love. I am blessed to know that I am immersed in unconditional love and well-being. I trust that I will receive exactly what I need and desire. I am born in the image and likeness of Source. Life force energy flows in, around, and through me. I am never alone. I have capability beyond my now perception. This is the moment in time when my true self will emerge. I have within me the brightest light. It is time to shine that light, first upon myself, and then upon the world. Life is meant to be lived in love. I am in love with life. I am in love with myself. As I love myself, I feel an overflow of love pouring forth from my heart. I am willing to share my love with the world. I am grateful for this opportunity to express this ever-expanding flow of love. The peace of unconditional love is within me, now and forever. That beautiful and powerful poem and prayer was written by today's guest, the amazing Laura Shepard. Laura has been a stay-at-home mom for the last 20 years. And during those years, she has immersed herself in spiritual study. She was introduced to the Abraham-Hicks material in 1996 and has been learning about the law of attraction and transforming her life ever since. Laura used the principles she learned from Abraham to create an interesting life for herself. She prides herself on not having any real credentials, and yet she has been able to do many things she loves that usually would require some qualifications. She has done research for New Thought ministers, facilitated spiritual discussion groups, created curriculum for home study groups, and taught classes in Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living. Laura also enjoys doing personal coaching. Most recently, she spent 3 years as co-host of a popular radio show, Absolute Living, on Unity FM with her friend, Reverend Ellen Davenport. At this time, I'd like to thank Laura for taking the time to be on the show. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. I've been off the air for several months, so it's nice to be on the radio again.
And you'll be back on soon, correct?
Well, it may be a little bit longer than I had originally planned. I've kind of decided in the meantime to take a little bit longer break. So
Okay.
I'll be on again in the future, but I don't know exactly when.
Okay. Well, as soon as you know, let me know, and I'll let the listeners know, and they can tune into you as well.
I'll do that.
So you ready for today's discussion?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
So a couple of shows ago, I was talking to the listeners about being a spiritual warrior and how to live according to principle, how to walk the walk and talk the talk. And as I said to you right before we started recording, that I consider, when I'm thinking of in my own life, when I'm thinking of, oh my goodness, what's going on, blah, 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 why is this happening, etc., very often you come to mind. And I say, what would Laura say? And then I make a shift and things start to pick up. So I consider you like the guru of walking the walk.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hope you do know that, like all spiritual warriors, I have those moments, too, when I'm like, what the heck am I doing now?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, despite that, you always pick yourself back up.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Somehow I do. Yep. Come through it, come out on the other side. Yep. And I'm learning more and more all the time. Ways to do that. A lot of the time I was, always focusing on, well, for the listeners, I've shared on my radio show and with friends and people in classes that I practiced depression for decades earlier in my life. And when I found the Abraham-Hicks material, that really helped me to overcome that. However, through the years, there would be periods where I was just not in a good place. And I would always try to sort of, in a sense, ignore that and just move to the positive thinking. And, that would usually help. But there were some times when I just couldn't get to the positive thinking. Mm-hmm. So over the last couple of years, I've really gotten to a point now of sort of relaxing into it. I'm learning more and more to just not resist anything, even if I get in a real bad space mentally. It's usually always mentally. To go with it, to not resist it, to go with it, because every single solitary thing that I create, whether you could label it positive or negative, I've created for a reason. So rather than resist it, go with it and see what I've created it for. What does it have to show me? It is a way to say it.
Right. So when you say, just for the listeners, I mean, I'm already familiar because I know you, but when you say, one, that you practiced depression for years, could you, that's not a term that many people are familiar with.
Oh, yeah. Well, the reason that I say I practice depression, I wouldn't have said that years and years ago, but after having found the Abraham-Hicks material and learning about the law of attraction, learning that I'm the creator of my experience, now, in retrospect, I say I was practicing depression because I personally don't believe that it got me that I didn't have any say in it or any control over it. I believe that I created it through my thinking, through my negative self-talk for years. And I still practice some of that same stuff. So I still have to be diligent. It's not like Abraham says, you don't reach that state of connection and then keep it forever, more like a college degree. I mean, right. It's from moment to moment. So it's a constant practice of being diligent about the way I'm thinking and the way I'm perceiving my life.
Right.
So that's why I say practicing.
Oh, understood. I sort of think about the story of Paul in the Bible who diligently prayed for the thorn in his flesh to be removed, and I sort of use that as my metaphysical bookmark to say, so every so often you're going to get this jab in the side from that thorn, and that thorn is those old voices and the old egoic chatterbox reminding you of, this is where you used to be, and you should come back and visit, but I still have the power to resist that and not go back.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm really coming to understand real recently here is I don't want to use my power to resist anything anymore. So if I go into that state of, sadness or depression or whatever you'd want to label it, I'm now practicing non-resistance and going with it and just being okay with it, knowing that's just at this point I'm willing to say that's a part of who I am. It deepens me. I'm more compassionate because of those periods. I think they really can be, if you look at them, they can be periods of growth. Depends on how you want to perceive them. So I'm now perceiving it differently.
Understood.
And just kind of going with the flow of it.
So as we're getting ready to go into our first break, I have a question. So just for clarity, are you sort of saying that if the feeling of depression should come up, rather than resist it, you feel it, but you don't, you feel the depression, but you don't become depressed? Is that sort of...
Sort of. I mean, I'm sort of just in the midst of understanding this. But, yeah, I would say, no, you go ahead and you go into it. And you could label it that you are depressed. You could definitely say, yes, I'm depressed. And just what I've been doing when I've gone there, which I recently went there, is, just to sort of write my feelings, sort of express it, allow it to flow through me rather than trying to stop it and using all my energy to resist it and try to be happy when really in the moment I don't feel happy. And, what we resist persists, so I'm trying to allow it through me and then just allow it and go with the flow of it.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. So it's time for our first break.
Wow.
Thank you, Seventh Wave family, for tuning in today. You are listening to Living a Sacred Life. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson, and this is Voice America, the Seventh Wave Network. We'll be right back.
Are you seeking spiritual guidance or spiritual instruction and insight? Do you want Reiki or a holistic life coach to assist you in manifesting the life you are meant to live? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then take this as opportunity knocking at your door. Pick up the phone or email Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson today and make those necessary changes in your life. Say goodbye to the mediocre and hello to the extraordinary life. What are you waiting for? Chat with Reverend Dr. Ray today. Call 202-607-1573 or visit www.clspfi.org on the web.
How can the value of astrology and Reiki come together as a healing process? Listen for The Astrology of Now with Reiki Rising, featuring your host, Curtis Williams. Our program will help you learn using your astrological chart and knowledge of astrology to set the right course in your life. We'll also explore the healing powers of Reiki, shamanism, and E3. You'll find out how easy it is to learn and teach Reiki so that you can help make this healing power work for you and those around you. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America 7th Wave channel.
Your online community for positive change. 7th Wave Network.
You are listening to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. If you have a question or comment about today's program, please call 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. or you can send an email to seventhwave@pfcls.org. Now let's return to Living a Sacred Life.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, family of the Seventh Wave Network. Once again, I am your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson, and we are welcoming back our guest, Laura Shepard. And Laura was in the process of talking to us about how she does not resist anything.
She works toward not resisting anything.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part. I mean, for me, that I know that's an important part is it's a constant work. It's a constant practice. Yeah. There's never a moment when it's done.
Yes.
So one of the things that I know that you reference is the pot of soup.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk to the listeners about what exactly you mean by this pot of soup and what that has to do with practicing spiritual principle.
Yeah, well, I had this insight several years ago because it used to be in the early days of learning about the fact that I'm the creator of my experience. I would, beat up on myself when I created something that I didn't like, something that I was labeling negative. And I would be frustrated with myself, as a lot of us are within the New Thought movement. But as I really started to look more deeply into the process of creation and what takes place, what I came to realize is that when I create anything, absolutely anything, I'm not just creating from my positive attitude or my negative attitude. I'm not just creating, quote unquote, some negative experience based solely on the resistance I'm having in my life at the moment. What I feel that we're doing is we're creating from our full consciousness all the time, similar to a pot of soup. So within a pot of soup, say I'm, chicken noodle soup, mm-hmm. You might be as well, but we're always going to have some variation on ingredients and spices and the amount of spices. And actually, frankly, each manifestation from me might have some different ingredients. Some creations, say, for example, if I create something that I'm viewing as a negative that I wish I didn't create, well, maybe it was a little heavier on the ingredient of worry or concern or frustration or anger. But within that recipe, that pot of soup, within that manifestation, along with those fears, worries, and concerns, are my hopes, dreams, desires, and passions as well. And so that's why you hear people say, oh, I created cancer, but that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Or, They go through some thing that we might look at as some horrendous, challenging scenario, but oftentimes they can say it was a real gift or they found a gift in it. And that's why I think that we're creating all the time from our full consciousness so that every manifestation can have gifts within it.
And I think that's why it's important to practice what you said you're practicing is not resisting, because if you don't resist it, well, if the person were to resist being diagnosed with cancer or anything, then more than likely through their resistance, they're not going to be open to the gift that's in there.
Correct. Yeah.
So just for clarifying, when you say creating in your experience, I already know what you're talking about, but it's not just what's happening in your specific, per se, day-to-day living, because I know that you and Reverend Ellen have talked about things like the tsunami in Japan and 9/11 and et cetera. And can you talk a little bit about how that also is tied into the pot of soup and creation?
What specifically do you want to talk about?
Well, you know how you would say that if it wasn't in your consciousness, it wouldn't show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I sort of believe that when I see something on TV that's what we could label as humans, we could label devastating. Oh, my goodness, there's children starving, or there's somebody being murdered, or a tsunami or something, and so if I see that and I perceive it as a negative and a horrible scenario, that speaks to the belief that I have within me that there are victims in the world and there's bad things that can happen, and or even go as far as to say that there's evil in the world, where I really believe that everything is unfolding for a reason, so that every single solitary, for example, say the tsunami, every single person within that experience of the tsunami, even though it's thousands of people, they each created that. They created themselves being in that scenario. Now, what's interesting is as you look at it, you'll see such a variation of actual experiences. Some people possibly were killed immediately.
Right.
Some were injured. Some were buried, found later. Some people got through it without a scratch. Just there's a vast variety of scenarios, which is an exact match to their consciousness. So each has their own individual personal experience based on their consciousness.
Right. And I know that well, let's go back a little bit. The reason that the radio show that you and Reverend Ellen hosted was called Absolute Living is because of this concept or this principle called absolutism.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
Well, and it's funny because I didn't come up with that. Somebody called me that. In fact, it was Miss Ellen Davenport who called me an absolutist many, many years ago. I didn't know what that was. That doesn't sound good. What's that? But all it means is it's somebody that believes. It doesn't mean because I'm an absolutist that I'm a perfect creator. It doesn't mean that. It means that no matter what I create, I know and believe that I am responsible for it. No matter what it is, I absolutely believe that I'm responsible through my consciousness for creating whatever it is that I'm experiencing.
Right. And I like the fact that in that you're not, because I can imagine some of the emails I may get, but you're not saying that people are victims or that they should beat themselves up because of what they created or manifested in their lives.
No, never.
Because ultimately, I mean, it's more empowering to know, well, if I created this, then I can also create that. Right.
But I guess my emphasis right now is, for me personally, in my journey of where I am in the moment, is less about, well, if I created that, say illness or something, then I can create this, wellness. It's more about, right now, for me, I created this, and I created it for a reason. Okay. I want to sit in it and see why I created it. Okay. And some people say, well, don't waste your time, don't stay in the energy of it. For me, for right now, I'm enjoying, which I've always sort of like figuring out how it works, but to not resist it, because what I'm feeling is when we in New Thought get sick, right away we go, to a healing. You can heal that, and it's like we want to skip ahead, and I feel like we're missing some steps in going with it, sitting in it, exploring it, feeling it, understanding it, and getting the gift within it, instead of just jumping right to, well, I have this, now I'm going to heal it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like we're skipping the gifts all the time.
Right. I sort of use the analogy like Thanksgiving dinner. What you're talking about is enjoying the process of gathering all the ingredients and actually cutting up the carrots and the celery and putting all of the dinner together versus going to McDonald's and getting something that you can throw in the microwave.
Yeah.
Part of the process is part of the principle in the process.
Yes, and enjoying the full experience, or experiencing the full experience, rather than just, seeing, here's what I created, boom, let's go right to. It would be, like Abraham uses this analogy that I just love. It would be like, I'm going to go on vacation, and I'm going to do this, this, and this, and at the end I'll arrive back home. Well, if that's the ending, then maybe I should just stay home. 'Cause that's the end result, right? I love
Right.
that analogy because it's like, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to just jump to the end rather than enjoy the journey, experience the journey, and see what is there for us to learn or what gifts are in there for us.
Exactly.
Because there's always opportunity for expansion and growth.
So how do you, if someone were to say, well, I'd like to do that, I'd like to, sit in the experience of it, how does one know that you're sitting in the experience of it versus without resistance versus sitting in it and, just simmering in it?
Yeah, that's a good question, huh? Oh, that's a good one. Well, yeah, I don't know that there's a real answer to that. I think we're all so unique and different, and I think even within my own personal life, each experience is different. So I don't know that I have an absolute answer. I think by sitting in it and embracing it, for lack of a better word, as opposed to resisting it, I think that you will know. Say if you feel like you're depressed, for example, or you're sick. It's the acceptance. It's just like, okay, I created it. And I think that we all can feel, if we get in touch with our feelings, which Abraham would say are our guidance system.
Right.
If we're in touch with that, I think we just know, okay, am I resisting this? Am I miserable in my cold or my depression or whatever? Or am I just flowing with it? Am I just sitting in it? Am I just experiencing it? And I think journaling helps me. Just no formal type, just scribbling some things out on paper sort of allows it to flow through, it feels like.
Right. So it's more knowing you well enough and knowing your sense of awareness enough to know which way you're going.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Self-awareness is the key, I think, to living this philosophy.
It's very important.
Yeah.
So as we're getting ready to go to break, when we come back, if you don't mind, tell the listeners your spider story.
Oh,
and how that ties into spiritual principle.
Oh, yeah. Love to.
Work for you? So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for listening to Living a Sacred Life. We'll be right back after these brief messages.
Awakened Media for a transforming world. Seventh Wave Network.
Our society is spiraling out of control. Are you stressed out and concerned about the events occurring around you? Is there hope? Yes, there is. Tune in to Living in the End Times, featuring your host, Monita Dukia, who will help you understand and navigate these perilous times. Living in the End Times airs live Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern Time, on 7th Wave.
Are you seeking spiritual guidance or spiritual instruction and insight? Do you want Reiki or a holistic life coach to assist you in manifesting the life you are meant to live? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then take this as opportunity knocking at your door. Pick up the phone or email Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson today and make those necessary changes in your life. Say goodbye to the mediocre and hello to the extraordinary life. What are you waiting for? Chat with Reverend Dr. Ray today. Call 202-607-1573 or visit www.clspfi.org on the web.
Listening on a higher dimension. Seventh Wave Network.
You are listening to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymond Anderson. If you have a question or comment about today's program, please call 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. Or you can send an email to 7thwave@pfcls.org. Now let's return to Living a Sacred Life.
And thank you for coming right back after those messages. Once again, we're with Laura Shepard. And before the break, I asked Laura to tell this amazing story about her experience with spiders.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my whole life, I had an extreme phobia of spiders. I don't know when it started, but it started obviously when I was a young child, because I can remember being quite young and being just horrified by the sight of a spider. Not so much afraid that it was going to hurt me, but just this overwhelming, horrendous feeling when just seeing its creepy, crawly legs. So, it was such a big phobia that I couldn't kill a spider because I couldn't, touch one end of something that would touch it. Like, I didn't want to, swat it with something because I would be touching the other end, I couldn't get that close. and even if one got on me, I couldn't brush it off. I would just freeze and scream, get it off, get it off, get it off. I couldn't even brush a little tiny spider off. I was so just horrified. And I remember I used to think, and honestly, if somebody wanted to kill me, seriously, all they'd have to do is put me in a room and put a spider on me, and that would just be the end, because I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't survive. So after I found Abraham back in 1996, and that was my first introduction to the idea that we create through our consciousness. So I was about a year into Abraham, and my kids were quite little, like 3 and 5, something like that, and they were out in the backyard, and they came running in screaming that there was a tarantula out there, so which we lived in Texas at the time, so there could have been one out there. And so I went out there to see where it was, mostly so that I would keep them away from it. Well, it wasn't a tarantula, but it was a really big spider, and it had made its web sort of on the side of our deck. So I told my husband, Dave, when he got home, put poison on it. I was having a fit. So supposedly he must, he went out there and put poison on it. Well, the next day I was hosing off the deck, and all of a sudden I caught sight of that spider still on the web on the side of the deck, and I just had a fit. So I turned this high-powered nozzle at the spider, which now that was actually kind of big because I was holding the nozzle to the other end of the spray. But it was one of those really forceful, strong, intense sprayers. And I turned it on the spider, and it did not knock the web down, and it did not knock the spider out of the web. Wow. I was like, oh, my gosh, I'm in a Stephen King movie. I was horrified. So anyway, I went in the house, and I'm just having a fit. I'm so upset. I'm so freaked out, and I know now because I'm into the Abraham teachings, I'm understanding that I create through my consciousness. So I'm understanding that this horrendous fear is going to draw that spider to me, which is making me more upset. So anyway, the end of the day comes, blah, blah, blah. We go to bed. We get up in the morning, and my husband did something that morning that he had never done before and has never done since. For some reason, he got out of bed and he opened the blinds in our bedroom. Wow. And that spider had made a web in my bedroom window.
Wow.
And I totally flipped out because I knew that I had drawn her from out on the deck in, to my bedroom window. And I was absolutely positive that the next day that spider was going to be in the house, probably in my bed. I was just having a fit.
Wow.
So in that moment, I remember I sat down at the end of my bed and I just said, I am not going to live like this. I am going to change this. I have no idea how, but I'm going to change it. I made this very strong, clear decision. And the minute I did that, I jumped off the bed. Luckily it was a weekend. I said, I'll be right back to my husband, just left the kids and Dave and went to Barnes & Noble's. The minute I made that really clear, strong decision, I got instant inspiration, and it was to go to Barnes & Noble's and get a field guide. And I'm like, I'm not questioning this. There's no, question or thinking. It's just, boom, in the car and go to Barnes & Noble's. Now, a field guide,
Right.
has pictures in it of spiders,
Right.
which I had never in my life held a book that had a picture of a spider in it or on it or anything, or the word or anything. So this was amazing to me, and to me this was evidence that once you make a strong, clear decision and you get the inspiration, you also get assistance. Because for me to be able to pick up a book that had, because the spider picture was on the front of it, and then to take it home and sit there and look through that book to find the picture of the spider that was in my window was huge progress. That was huge.
Almost definitely.
Yeah. So I found the spider. Then the next inspiration that came was to call the Herd Museum, which was a nature museum that was right near where we lived in Texas.
Okay.
So I called them and I said, "Do you have a spider expert?" Which is weird. They go, "Yes, as a matter of fact." They go, "Yes, and as a matter of fact, he's retiring in a couple of days, but he happens to be here today." And they put me over to this man. So, of course, he's an expert in creepy crawlers, so he loves them. But I told him that I had this very severe phobia of spiders that I was trying to get over. So, of course, he was thrilled. So we were on the phone for about 45 minutes, and he told me a lot of information about that type of spider and, some other spiders that I'd seen around the house and stuff. So we had this great conversation. And I knew that in order to change this, I had to replace this negative reaction with a positive reaction, which I felt like the only way that I'd be able to do that is through appreciation, which seemed impossible at the time. How am I going to appreciate a spider?
Exactly.
But I knew that was going to be the way. So what was so funny, though, you'll love this, because you know Abraham's language, and language within new thought. So keep that in mind. So what he said to me on the phone, which I thought was just, he says, this type of spider is called an argiope for the listeners. It's also known as a garden spider, banana spider, zigzag spider. If you're listening from Texas, I'm sure you know this spider. You can look it up on the web, argiope. But the females are quite large. The males are small. So he knew this was a female based on what I was describing. And he said this spider is actually blind. They can't see, and so they rely on the vibration of the web. Vibration. I was like, because Abraham always talks about your vibration. Now, actually, all spiders rely on the vibration of the web, but it felt very significant to me when he said it.
Because it moved from downstairs to upstairs.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, what happened then, it was about a 3-month odyssey of me every morning getting up, opening the blinds, and watching. At the beginning, I would open the blind not looking and then go across the room and watch her from across the room. So I was still freaked out. But really, Raymond, it only took probably a few days before I would open the blinds and be nose-to-nose with that spider, be nose-to-nose at that window. And she stayed there for 3 months. But every morning, she would take down the web. She'd take down the anchors that she had put up. She'd take down the web and put up a new web every morning. And just watching her do that was the beginning of really beginning to appreciate her. And feel free to interrupt me when it's time for break.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're good.
Okay. But then at the same time, what I thought was really interesting is a barn spider. We kind of had a bay window. It was kind of like 3 windows in one. And a barn spider had made its web right next to the window where this spider was, who I named Charlotte. I was real original with that, huh? But anyway, so I would watch the barn spider and Charlotte obviously spiders create webs for the same reason, but they did it differently, which I just thought was sort of a little lesson in diversity, that she would take it down every morning and put a new one up, and she stayed in the web 24/7. Now, the barn spider would take its web down at dusk and put a new one up and just stay in it overnight. And in the morning, he'd leave the web. I called him a he. And he was messy. He left it there. And he'd go kind of hide in the eaves. And then he'd come down at night and take it down and then put a new one up. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they did it differently, but for the same reason. So eventually, I noticed Charlotte was like getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I thought, wow, that's really wild. This is a big spider. And I would stand at the window and I could just feel this love pouring out of me toward the spider, which I thought, this is just bizarre, but I love this spider. Then one day I got up and I looked at her and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to her? She was all wrinkly like a raisin, and she had made an egg sac.
Okay.
So anyway, I just kept watching her and watching her and watching her. And after about 3 months of hanging out with Charlotte, I was standing at the window one day and she fell out of the web. And I knew she had died. So I ran outside, ran and knelt down on the ground, sort of in the garden where she had fallen. And I was just sobbing. And for 30 minutes, ants just came immediately and devoured her entire body in like 30 minutes. And I just sat there and sobbed because I felt like I had lost this really dear friend. And then the inspiration came, again, crazy woman. I left the house, went to the local pet store, and said, could I hold a tarantula?
Wow.
And in honor of Charlotte, I held a tarantula. And I can't tell you, Raymond, I stood, and they didn't know. They just thought I was looking for a tarantula. They didn't know what was going on. I stood there with that tarantula in my hand, and I thought I had climbed Mount Everest. Mm. It was amazing, empowering feeling to know that I'd overcome that to the extent that now I can hold tarantulas. I've had tarantulas crawling all over my body, and I love them. Today when I see a spider, to me it represents that anything is possible, because if I could do that, I can do anything.
Right. And that's exactly why I wanted to tell that story.
Yeah. And thank you for the opportunity to tell it, because it's always good to remind myself that I can do anything, and if I can do it, anybody else can do it as well. Anything is possible.
Amen.
Yeah.
And perfect timing, because it's about that time for a break.
All right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for tuning in to Living a Sacred Life on Voice America, the Seventh Wave Network. We will be right back.
Be extraordinary. Seventh Wave Network.
Are you seeking spiritual guidance or spiritual instruction and insight? Do you want Reiki or a holistic life coach to assist you in manifesting the life you are meant to live? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then take this as opportunity knocking at your door. Pick up the phone or email Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson today and make those necessary changes in your life. Say goodbye to the mediocre and hello to the extraordinary life. What are you waiting for? Chat with Reverend Dr. Ray today. Call 202-607-1573 or visit www.clspfi.org on the web. Is there a difference between dream work and intuition? The relationship is closer than you think. These are mutually supportive concepts. When you dream, your intuition serves as a foreshadow of the future and can bring rapid results through dream analysis. Tune in to The Partnership of Intuition and Dreams with your host, Dr. Marcia Emery. Explore this unique relationship and learn to understand how the symbolism of dreams can be clarified. Listen every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Voice America 7th Wave channel.
The new home for visionary positive change. Seventh Wave Network.
You are listening to Living a Sacred Life with Dr. Raymont Anderson. If you have a question or comment about today's program, please call 1-866-472-5795. Again, that's 1-866-472-5795. Or you can send an email to seventhwave@pfcls.org. Now let's return to Living a Sacred Life.
Hello and welcome back. So we just heard Laura telling a story about her phobia of spiders that turned into, for lack of a better word, a love affair with a tarantula. So let's talk about how that applies to spiritual principles and the concept of creation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's a great story. It really illustrates kind of what can take place, and I think the power of that whole manifestation, turning a severe phobia into absolute unconditional love, the whole story illustrates it, because initially, I had this. First of all, I had an awareness that I was the creator of it, and then I made a very strong decision that I didn't want to live this way anymore. I didn't want it controlling me, and I was going to change it. I didn't know how, but I was going to change it. So that really strong, clear decision then brought me inspiration. It's not like I had to sit there, well, how am I going to do it? Let me think. Well, let's see. There wasn't any of that. It was a decision, and bam, the inspiration came. And then, as I was saying in the story, what was so amazing is I think because of the power of the decision I had, it felt like the universe just rushed in to assist me. And I had the strength to pick up a book that had a spider in it.
Right.
I just think that's a miracle right there. If I didn't do anything else, that would have been a miracle.
Exactly. And I think people don't look at the small things like that and consider them miracles as well, though.
Yeah. But feeling the feeling of knowing the horrendous phobia, and then feeling the power of holding that book with spiders in it was really quite amazing. I knew in the moment, I could feel that this was big.
Wow.
But it was funny because I could really feel that I was going to do this. But I did feel like it did seem almost ridiculous, like, seriously, Laura, you're going to really change this phobia? It was kind of like that was in there too, but I was determined. And the inspiration came, and then I just followed the inspiration, and then it just unfolded. And it was easy, and it was miraculous, and every day just felt amazing as I stood and watched this new friend and make a new web. And I even played with her, where I'd blow on the web and mess with her, and she'd flip to the other side. I couldn't believe I was doing this stuff. Yeah, and to this day, I have a photograph of her on my fireplace mantle.
Wow.
Yeah, she means a lot. Yeah.
That's profound.
Yeah.
So how would you suggest that someone learn how to become more self-aware so that they can, take that initial step to make up their mind that they're ready to change and move forward and start seeing miracles?
Yeah, and I don't know if I have an exact recipe. I think we're all so incredibly unique that we really have to find our own way. But I guess the recipe I would say is just believing. If you just, in whatever way you can for yourself, find a way to come to a place of understanding that you are the creator of your experience. And I think that, the first step is owning that, no matter what it is that we create, to be able to acknowledge and own the fact that I created it, because that takes the victim out of the scenario. It doesn't. If I'm the creator, then I don't feel like somebody victimized me. It puts you in a place of power. And then it's just a matter of being honest with yourself, just being honest about, why did I behave that way? What is really going on in me that would make me feel those feelings? What belief do I have in here that would make me react in that way? So it's sort of questioning and examining and watching and being really honest with yourself.
Okay, so Suppose.
And,
Because
okay,
I know
suppose.
I would have asked that. I already know what your answer is going to be, so I'm not even going to ask that question.
Okay.
So, slight switch. Are you still available for coaching?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, if one of the listeners or 100 of the listeners are interested in your services as a coach, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, probably the best way is to email me at absoluteliving@unity.fm.
Okay.
Even though we're no longer, for the listeners too, Ellen and I are no longer on the air, but all of our shows are still archived, and you can still reach us. So absoluteliving@unity.fm. Yeah, and I have no credentials. But the good news is I don't charge.
Well, what you mean is you have no term and piece of paper credentials, but
exactly.
You have the training and the experience.
I have life experience, yeah.
I look at it this way. When was the last time a shaman at some Native American tribe pulled out a piece of paper to say that Red Elk or whomever gave him this ability?
Oh, that's a good point. I like that.
So, for the last couple of moments, if someone were to contact you about coaching, what is your process? Like, what would they expect, or what should they expect when they give you a call?
It's totally relaxed. There's no format. It's just two people having a conversation is really all it is. And what I like to say to my clients, or whatever you want to call those people that call me and I coach, I like to say this to them. I like to say that a friend is someone who knows the song in my heart and sings it to me when I forget.
Beautiful. Amen.
Yeah, and so they would just call me, and you and I have had these conversations in the past. They just call me, and it's very informal. They just sort of tell me what's going on, and we just have a conversation. And hopefully, if things go well, we have some breakthroughs, we have some ahas. I usually get more out of it than they do. That's why I don't charge, because I get a real charge out of doing it. It always helps me. So, it would just be a very relaxed conversation. The only requirement that I have is that you have to believe that you're the creator of your experience. If you don't, I'm worthless.
Because then it turns into like a wrestling match or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in our last couple of moments, do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to impart to the listeners about spiritual principle, or how to own up to their responsibility as being creators of their experience?
Yeah, I think it's always just a decision. It's just a decision. I think for me, I just keep that awareness at the forefront of my consciousness 24/7. Not that I'm, don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm perfect. It's not that I don't get mad or crabby or frustrated or depressed or whatever you want to label it. But I do keep it in the forefront of my consciousness that I am the creator. I'm creating all this. And, I might go off into whatever for a while, but I do know that I created it. And I think that is where the power lies, is just understanding that no matter what is coming my way, I'm creating it. But what really helps is if it's a negative, if you could call it a negative, to remember that I'm creating it from my full consciousness, from my pot of soup. So there's going to be a gift in it as well. That helps to not do the whole beating up on ourselves. So I think that's probably just to remember that there's gifts in it. And the big thing to remember is anything is possible. Anything is possible. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that's a hard concept to grasp. Especially when they're resisting whatever's going on, that, there could be some good or a light at the end of the tunnel.
For sure. Yeah, I know. It's challenging. I totally understand, but it is possible. Yeah.
And that's the reason why I love your story about the spider, because clearly if you were someone who, if a spider was on your shoulder or on your knee and you couldn't brush it off to run from it, but you froze to being someone who, 3-4 months later was in a pet store holding a tarantula?
Yep.
I mean,
anything is possible.
Exactly. I mean,
anything.
At that point, what's not possible?
Exactly. It's so true. I know. I'm so glad that you asked me to tell that story. That just really reminds me of the power that I have. That feels so good. Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. I mean, on so many levels, for so many reasons, but it very concretely demonstrates what spiritual principle can do, from taking you from the side of fear to the side of love, from the side of what's not possible to what is possible. I mean, it's on so many levels, it demonstrates very clearly what it means to create your experience.
Yes. Yeah, and like you said on the break, you don't have a spider phobia, but you would not be picking up a tarantula.
Right.
And I just think that the intensity of my phobia then on the other side matches the intensity of the love that I feel for spiders now.
Right. And the fact that you called Charlotte a friend says that at some point you vibrated and matched on a relational level with this. What people look at insects and think they're insignificant, but this creature, this God in human form, in spider form, touched you on a very intimate level that you were willing and able to call Charlotte friend.
Yes.
That's pretty meaningful and spiritually powerful.
Well, and really, she's one of my greatest teachers. She's really one of my greatest gurus, or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She really showed me that anything is possible and that I was capable of anything.
Well, it's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
So as we come to a close of yet another episode of Living a Sacred Life, I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson. And I'd like to extend a very, very heartfelt thank you very much to our guest today, Laura Shepard. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
My beautiful friend, I thank you. And I will be giving you a call soon about some coaching, so be ready.
Oh, cool. All right. I'll be looking forward to it.
Thank you. So thank you for tuning in today. And I pray the lesson of today has assisted you in learning how to live a more sacred life. To everyone, blessings, joy, and love to you all. Talk to you soon.